Okay. So let's say that what we've done right now is we've really talked about the basic remote worker. So the basic remote worker is going to have the ability to have some kind of voice communication like we're doing now.
Right?
And I'm doing this through my laptop. I'm not using the phone. And this would be if I was coming back into my office. So
Right.
going back into the office, I'm talking to you. This is a functionality. And this is how most people think remote working is done. Very true. There's a lot of collaboration. The next step is, what do I have access to? So if I was in HR or if I was in
Sure.
accounting or part of your design team, then
Sure.
there's additional information I would need access to.
Sure.
Let's say the information is on-prem, whether that
Hmm.
is the client's office or their data center.
Sure. Well, the first thing for you to be able to work, as I mentioned before, you have to have what's called a VPN connection, or you should have a VPN connection. When you have that, you now have access to your work network. It's basically as though you're sitting at your desk in the office. That's the intent of VPN, to provide you with this safe environment to work, and it's your work environment. Now, the thing is, depending on the company, you can set VPN up in different ways. How it should be set up is based on your role within the company. It should provide you with certain access rights to certain types of data. So, for example, as you mentioned before, there's the cloud solutions. We're not going to talk about the cloud solutions because they have got their own types of authentication, that sort of thing. But if you're
That will
talking
be
just
another call. We'll do
yeah,
that
that's
on
another
another.
call. That's another call. So if you're talking just purely, let's say, on-prem type solutions, or where you have data on-prem or applications on-prem, that sort of thing, when you VPN, it should provide you with whatever access is necessary for your role. So for example, you should always provide what's called a least privilege, okay? Very often what companies do is they give VPN access to everyone in the company, that when you log on, you have full access to everything in the network. You should not have that. In particular, you might have contractors, you might have consultants, you might have third-party vendors that need to have access to your network. And again, it really needs to be limited. And the reality is employees of the company are the exact same way. Not to say that you're going to be malicious and do things maliciously, but the reality is you should only have access to what you need to have access to do your job, your day-to-day role.
Okay. So we're kind of shifting then, right? The first part of that was a device, whether it was company issued or it was personal, some thoughts around that.
Right?
The next is really logical, and that's the software. So the
Sure.
connection is going to be a VPN, which is a virtual private network. Just
Hmm.
make sure we don't lose anybody on the acronyms.
Right?
And coming back in, and then the logic is set up that the individual worker will have access to whatever they would need as if they were
Right.
there. On
Correct.
the job, it might be their card key access.
Hmm.
That would be like that would be how it would look physically.
Absolutely, absolutely, because there are controls in place for that as well. Again, the fact that you're at home now, the company has no control over that sort of thing. So again, if someone gets access to your house, if you don't lock your laptop, if you leave your laptop in the car, things along those lines, okay? But even little things like you should never have your passwords to auto-populate. So for example, a lot of people say, remember my password, remember my login credentials. Well, the reality is if somebody steals your phone or you lose your phone, your laptop, whatever case may be, you don't want to think to yourself, oh no, was I logged into the device, or oh no, they can just click, next, or log in and automatically log on. So there's a lot of these types of things that you just have to be cognizant about. Setting up this quote unquote remember password is bad news. It's just really, really, you should not be doing it. And again, I understand you want simplicity. Nobody wants to remember 100 passwords. Okay, so again, that's another reason why you might want to have one of those password databases, where it keeps all your passwords in there, like a LastPass and those types of applications, which are great for that sort of thing as well, for exactly this kind of thing. All right. I mean,
Okay.
there are a lot of remote work cybersecurity tips, basically. Understand the type of information you're dealing with and how you need to protect it. Never save work information on personal devices, things along those lines. And of course, as I mentioned before, the king of all this is the public Wi-Fi. That's the king. I mean, that's the first thing. Never, ever, ever, ever use it. But if you have to use it, VPN is really the key for that.
Okay. And And for those that are listening, that there's also ways to get personal VPNs. Like you might have a
Absolutely.
cafe or something like that,
100%.
that you can have your own back to your own cloud. If you've got a
Sure.
OneDrive, or if you've got uh, an iCloud account, or you're using VOX or something like
Mhm.
that, then this is all, whatever we're
Absolutely.
talking about would work in your personal life as well.
So
Okay.
absolutely for VPN, now again, when I'm talking VPN, typically, like for business, you're basically connecting to another network. You're connecting to your work network so that it's as though you're sitting there. But the reality is, just as a personal, if you don't want to even think about work, you happen to be in a hotel. When you use VPN, you're providing yourself with anonymity, okay, is what it's doing. It's basically randomizing information that people can't see what it is that you're doing. I'm not necessarily recommending it using your credit cards and passwords and all that, but it's far, far, far better than if you don't use it. So again, there's tons of services. Some are free, some you pay for. It's very cheap. Always, always, always use VPN when you're on a public network. Like I said, with the exception if you're just browsing for news or weather or that sort of thing.
Okay. So there's a device, there's a logic in there, and then we were talking about practice. I think practice is that next piece where that's like, oh, and a friend of ours, Krista, always talks about good cyber hygiene. And I know that
Right?
sounds kind of awkward, but you mentioned it. It's using the VPN. It's not auto-populating passwords. It's line of sight.
Right.
It's not picking up random thumb drives. It's
Mm-hmm.
not storing information in
Right.
in public drives or personal drives. Those are
Sure.
some of the basics. So